Running footwear as we know it's really come full circle. So back in the good old days it was very minimal, really for professional athletes or elite athletes, and then it became way more complicated as time went on. So the running boom of the 70s moved into the 80s. We saw a lot of stuff being added to shoes, and with that complexity, difficult to tell the story, a bit of confusion. Now we're in a unique position that things are being more simplified. We're getting back to a product that's more flexible and I think a lot more athlete friendly, and I think that's great. I think athletic companies have designed shoes to align to the ankle pretty much because that's the way it was always done. So there's no real science behind it, and this is what we need to question now. That's the reason we're having this discussion. The subtalar joint's a really important joint. So if we look at the foot, we have the ankle, which is actually a joint of the leg, and the ankle connects the leg to the foot. The subtalar joint's the joint immediately below that, and it basically is a joint of the foot. It's so important because it really is the major joint that allows for the key elements of walking and running, those being the terms everybody knows about, pronation and supination. Without the subtalar joint, you can't have those movements and you can't walk or run properly. Axial geometry, as the name suggests, is all about axes. So when we talk about motion of the foot, we always talk about motion around an axis. So if we look at the ankle joint here, you can imagine that if we drive a nail through the ankle joint, so it's this pin here, and we rotate the pin, the motion is going to be in this direction as we rotate it. Now the unique thing about the subtalar joint is that its axis is aligned obliquely. So it's actually aligned in this direction, which means that as you rotate the subtalar joint, the movement is in the direction of supination or in the direction of pronation. And that's what makes this technology so important. So shoe designed to accommodate axial geometry, very, very important. If we have a look at the way this shoe is constructed, this is pretty representative of the way every shoe's ever been constructed by any company. So you can see that this is a grid pattern. And as we said, when you design it in this way, it makes a recognition mostly of the ankle joint. And as we know, the ankle joint's not the most important joint. The most important joint is the subtalar joint. So we have to basically look at a deconstruction of the midsole and change the angles or manipulate the geometry of the midsole to recognize the subtalar joint, not the ankle joint. If we can do that, we're on a real winner. The advantages of axial geometry for an overpronator or an oversupinator are many. And the real key here is that we can actually take weight out of the shoe whilst manipulating the geometry, so we can make a recognition for somebody who is either an overpronator or an underpronator. So just by changing the way we decouple the midsole, we can make a recognition of that athlete. That is really incredible, and I think it's going to be a huge advantage for the athlete. The importance of the midfoot, I think critical. We've talked about the subtalar joint. The midfoot is very important. It allows us to transfer load from the rear foot to the forefoot. It's basically the link, the go-to structure. So we have to make a recognition of how we can transfer the stresses, and we do that with axial geometry. Axial geometry in the forefoot, I guess, is the last piece of the jigsaw puzzle here. We've talked about designing for the rear foot, designing for the midfoot. We shouldn't be ignoring the forefoot. At the moment, you can see that we are basically designing the forefoot for flexibility in this direction, but the bones are aligned in this direction and the axes are different for every single one. So we have to make sure that when we're manipulating the geometry of the forefoot, we make a recognition of those axes. If we can do that, we've got a product that's going to recognize load from the moment of contact right through the midfoot and into toe-off. We've got the complete product. The benefits of axial geometry, I think form, fit and function. So 3 huge benefits, 3 bullet points for us. Form in terms of this is a whole new project, it's a whole new way of designing footwear, and we think that it's going to make the athlete run in a totally different way with better style, with better comfort. Fit, of course, perhaps the singular most important thing in footwear. If the shoe doesn't fit, it won't work properly. It leads us on to function. Function, the most important thing. We need to make sure that the shoe works with the athlete so they can function to the best of their ability. That's what it's about.